I don't know many players that started back when I did in Chapter 1, Season 1. Those first couple of months were magical. Because of that, I don't think most people remember what OG Fortnite really was like. Epic is about to release Chapter 1, Season 1, and because so few people played, there are a lot of elements from that time that are just forgotten about, and others that are just impossible to replicate. So many of these features were only present during the first season of Fortnite, which means we haven't seen them in 7 years. Which is really what inspired me to make this video. After thinking back to that time period and even looking back at some old clips, an entire tsunami of memories came flooding into my mind, which is what I want to share with you all today. Now, to be clear, not everything I mention is going to be exclusive to Season 1, but most of these things are going to be things that came pre-Season 5. Which means even if Fortnite Season OG was your first exposure to OG Fortnite, you still don't understand what OG Fortnite is. The era that Epic is giving us to revisit is completely different from everything that came after. Season 5 onward, Fortnite gained insane momentum and popularity and new ideas that would eventually become the groundwork for what you see in-game today. But before we got there, we went through what I like to call the Discovery era, a time period I feel the community takes for granted and isn't held in enough reverence. I'm recording this before the release of Fortnite's permanent OG mode, but regardless of if you're watching this before or after, or whether you're an OG Season 1 player like me, or someone who started in Chapter 6 that's just curious about how things used to be, these are some of the things I feel like everyone forgets about OG Fortnite. The first thing that comes to my mind is culture. Not just for Fortnite itself, but gaming in general, or even the internet. You have to understand, we're talking about an era before streaming was popular, before clip farming, before everyone was a TTV kid, before Ninja or Drake made their debut, before commentary channels, before the metaverse, collabs. It was just raw gameplay, which in many aspects was unfinished, but that didn't matter to us. We were all curious about this quirky little experiment called Fortnite and wanted to explore the map just as much as we wanted combat. This is why I call it the Discovery era. We were all trying to figure out what Fortnite was and how to play. I feel like, at this time, Fortnite was as much of an exploration game as it was a BR. You loved landing on the outskirts because the map was massive, with tons of little Easter eggs, but also because no one wanted to land at a marked POI. That would be suicide. Why would you do that? That is signing yourself up for a one-way ticket to death. During Season 1 specifically, the player base was at its infancy. Battle Royale as a genre is still fresh with limitless potential. Fortnite is still the new kid on the block, trying to establish itself amongst the juggernauts like PUBG, H1Z1, and even Call of Duty. Everyone sucks at the game, gameplay is really slow, but that's okay because there's this big new map that's super explorable, and you're just enjoying that as much as you are getting into random fights. Actually, getting into fights completely terrifies you. As a matter of fact, if you could find a way to get a victory royale without getting a single kill, you would probably do it just so you can flash that shiny new umbrella. Now compare this to how Fortnite is today. People aren't running around trying to be the sweatiest players dropping 40+ kills around. We're not playing the game to attract new followers on Twitch. Heck, we're not even interested in buying cosmetics because what loser would do that in a free video game? Instead, we're here because the game is quirky and fun with a unique art style, and we just want to have a good time exploring the map, maybe getting 1 or 2 kills. My point is that the culture of Fortnite back then is so different to what it is now, and it really paints a picture in your mind that sets a tone for why people really enjoyed it. One of the craziest ways you see this is hidden within the gameplay at that time. For example, most people today would say that it's a requirement to play Fortnite with a shotgun in your inventory, but it wasn't like that in Season 1. Shotguns were heavily underutilized. Look at most people's loadouts. I look at my old gameplay and internally cringe.
Oh shit, they're outside, I just saw them, they're right there.
C4, man. Alright guys, hang on.
They're right up front of us. Ooh, I hear it.
Oh. And that didn't help.
Watch out, watch out.
Get him! Get him!
Oh shit, how did I get one shot? What the? No!
I got one! God damn it, I'm down! Shoot him! There's only one left! Get him! Shoot him!
Oh my god! How did I get one shot?
I'm so done. I think part of this was because shotguns felt weird to use, but also in other shooting games, shotguns weren't as essential to the meta as they are inside of Fortnite. Most of us who played Call of Duty or PUBG weren't looking to run around with shotties. And even when it comes to Fortnite at this time, why would you? A green AR could do 83 headshot damage. The OG burst was a triple shot, and if you got the blue version, it was more powerful than a purple scar for the headshot multiplier if you hit 2 out of the 3 shots. But then again, shotguns back then were also insanely busted for the amount of damage and range that they had, and by season 2, we had figured that out. I just think it's funny to look at the old loadouts from that time. It goes to show that none of us knew what we were doing, which is another thing that I feel is criminally downplayed. We talk about how problematic bot lobbies are today, and we also talk about how bad players were in Chapter 1, but I want you to look at this. There's not a single bot inside of Fortnite today that is that terrible. This is why I say OG Fortnite can never come back. No matter how many old seasons you bring back, how many of the old weapons, how accurate everything is to how it used to be back then, the player base can never go back to being that bad, even when the old players come back and flood the lobbies in permanent OG. The player base was objectively terrible, and that's what made the gameplay fun. We were all nervous, especially when it came to top 10 situations. I can't tell you how many of these I fumbled. I was 1 kill away from a victory royale, 1 shot, maybe 5 HP. All to fumble the win because I could not get my nerves in check. Another thing I remember from this time period is watching a lot of Fortnite tutorials. There was one creator in particular this time, I can't remember his name, but he said that building is one of the most underrated mechanics inside of Fortnite. He used to say that if you put up a ramp and 4 walls, you were better than 90% of the player base. And to be fair, he was entirely accurate. Just thinking back to this time period, the overall culture of Fortnite exuded fun. Looking at tutorials was not only insightful, but exciting, and we were all just trying to be the first one in our friends group to get a victory umbrella. That way we could flex it off to everybody we knew. We would do almost anything to get it, which is why so many of us avoided fights, but it's also why so many of us were so bad. Ironically, one thing that's definitely lost to this era of Fortnite because we tried to avoid so many fights is how peaceful things used to be. Since most players were not interested in landing at named locations, and because there was no in-game chat, it allowed you to take in a lot of the ambience that the game naturally produced. And quite honestly, a lot of that ambience and peace came from landing at unnamed locations. For example, one of my old favorite landing spots used to be the factories outside of Dusty, which weren't in Season OG because the meteor turned that area into Dusty Divot. Or you know what about the Gus racetrack before it became the raceway outside of Paradise Palms? These were great landing spots that were fun to explore in early Fortnite, not to mention they were out of the way of the marked locations which seemed too scary to land at straight out of the battle bus. But it wasn't just the unmarked locations that added to the serenity of early Fortnite. Moisty Mire was one of my favorite spots to land at during the discovery era of Fortnite. The trees would give you insane mats in a time where the farm rate was generally really low for normal objects, and it was in the far corner of the map. Sure, there were people that landed there sometimes, but there wasn't really much there outside of a few trees and some shacks, and of course, the occasional chest that was sprinkled around. Most of the time, it was a pretty safe bet compared to something like Retail Row. And once again, because not many players landed here, it was quiet. And if you were like me and had the chance to play a lot of solos before the game became popular and all your friends started jumping on, there was so much time to take in the ambience and the scenery. This allowed players to use more of their imagination in a way that was unique to other seasons of Fortnite as well as other video games at the time, which is why I believe this era is so impactful to a lot of OGs. There were so many small details you were able to take in around the map and create your own stories inside of your mind. I remember the first time I found one of those little shacks on a standalone hill on the outskirts on the Fortnite island, and I always thought to myself, I wonder which college students put that couch up there. You have to keep in mind, this is a time before Fortnite had its own official storyline, so it was natural to be curious about what the storyline might be, or even make up your own in your mind. In many ways, not getting any story for the first 2 seasons primed OG players to becoming curious about it later on. This is another reason why I say storytelling has always mattered in Fortnite, even before the official story was a thing. Naturally, we wanted to know the backstory for this island, so until we got an official one, our minds filled in the gaps. Now, although natural storytelling from all the Easter eggs was impressive, as well as the fun designs of various named and unnamed locations, none of this would have been as impactful if the sound design wasn't so well put together. First of all, there was the natural ambience that came from just playing in the environment, the wind blowing, birds chirping, crickets or owls at nighttime. It's amazing how alive Fortnite just felt at a time when there were no wildlife or NPCs. Not to mention the rest of the game's sound design complemented the organic resonance it had so well. For example, everyone gushes about the OG Scar sound or the OG burst, but what about the sound when you picked up a new weapon? It had this old arcade game kind of a feel to it, and somehow it managed to feel rewarding and peaceful all at the same time when you were picking up new items. Although it's not an organic sound effect, it does somehow add to the overall charm of exploring this vast island and picking up something exciting. Also, speaking of picking up weapons, at this time, you used to have to manually pick up each item individually. You couldn't just run through the loot of down players and insta-pick up everything. Instead, you'd be spamming the square button trying to get as much loot as possible. I also like the old glow around the weapons. It had this vibrant sparkle to it. It almost felt whimsical. I know a lot of these things might sound goofy at first glance, but all these features working together just created the overall experience that was OG Fortnite. And in many ways, when you think back to how the game and the community were at that time, things were very innocent. We weren't worried about the latest leaks, there were no collabs or battle passes, people weren't doxing employees or starting drama over unpopular updates or corporate decisions. And speaking of updates, the simplest things used to get us excited. Anytime we had a major seasonal event, Epic would change the lobby to a unique 3D design. Look at how crazy the Halloween lobby looked, or even Christmas. To this day, these are still top-tier 3D lobbies that clearly had a lot of love put into them. Even when it came to Fortnite's first Christmas, the inclusion of lights on bushes was just the coolest little chef's kiss touch. Yes, even back then we talked about how cool it would be if the entire island was covered in snow, but Christmas lights and a snowball launcher is all we needed to spice things up and to keep us happy back then. This is why I try to stay grateful for the things that Epic pushes out in the game now. I might not like every change, but I came from an era where a shopping cart was revolutionary movement for rotation on the island. Fortnite just did not take itself seriously, and we loved it for that. Now, if we had updates like this today, Epic would get laughed off the internet. There's beauty in OG Fortnite simplicity, and although I wouldn't want to go back to that for main BR, I still look fondly and laugh at how simple things were sometimes. We truly were impressed with so little. When you look at what Fortnite is now compared to what it used to be, it's anything but simple. But I absolutely love what it's become. I can't put my finger on it yet, but there's something about Chapter 6 that has recaptured some of the magic of early Fortnite while being objectively more complex. This Friday at 9 AM Eastern Time, I will be returning to the true OG era of Fortnite for the first time in 7 years. If you want to share this experience together live, be sure to subscribe and tune in. But until then, I guess I'll have to catch you on the battle bus. I love y'all. Peace out.